Welcome to Bitovi Academy. This video covers how to read and write to observables in Angular. Specifically, we will create a code pen that is already set up with our Angular component rendering the HTML of the credit card form, and we're going to write the values of an element into an observable and then read that observable back out into Angular. Basically, we're just trying to write to an observable and read from it. So let's see what the final result looks like. Notice that as we type, the value we typed appears below. That's all we want to do. Get the value from this input and write it into an observable, and using Angular, write out the value of that observable. To solve this, we'll need to create a user card number behavior subject on the Angular component's instances. We'll need to listen to the input's value change and write that value out to the observable behavior subject. We'll learn more about these in a moment. And finally, we'll write out the behavior subject's value using Angular's view. Now let's talk about what you need to know to complete this exercise. And the first thing you need to know is to do this exercise, you want to run this code pen here in your browser. This is the starting point of this exercise. It has RxJS and Angular already installed, and as mentioned before, it has an Angular component called MyApp that already has the form HTML in it. It already comes with styles, everything you need to know to get started. There's also this app component, and this is the data that contains the state that this form will have access to. So we need to add our RxJS observables in here and then read and write to them in here. So the next thing you need to know is about behavior subjects, how to initialize one on your component, and also what they are and why you would use them. But let's start with how you would actually use it. So to import something from RxJS in our setup that we have in CodePen, it's importing the global RxJS. So to really import behavior subject from RxJS, you can import it like this. You would write const behavior subject equals destructure behavior subject from RxJS as a property. And this will give you a behavior subject. You can also get subject and other types of observables there, as we've seen previously from the RxJS object. Now, with Typescript and Angular, and in proposals for classes in Typescript, you can initialize a property on a class by using the property name equals and then the value. This string right here is TypeScript, so don't worry about that if you're not familiar with TypeScript. It essentially says create a behavior subject that should only accept strings as values, only emit strings as values. So here's how I can create a user card number property on a class called app component, which, by the way, if you haven't realized, is the exact same name as our component that we're using up above. And I'm going to initialize it to a behavior subject. So here we can actually see if an instance of that class gets made. Here I'm creating an instance of app component. And if I can actually read the user card number property off of app, and it will be a behavior subject. So now you've got that user card number. Now we have to see how to write to it and read to it. But before you do, actually, let's talk about what a behavior subject is and why we're using that instead of good old subject. So this example, I think, will explain pretty well. But first, I'm going to explain the problem with subjects, actually. So here I'm going to get subject. I'm going to instead create a subject. And if I run this code, here I'm creating a subject, and I'm emitting a value on it called the past. But now I'm going to subscribe to that subject, and we'll see that nothing runs because the subject emitted the value before the subscriber, so the subscriber never sees it. Now with the DOM, a lot of times you want to initialize your observables to whatever state the DOM is in, and you want any new subscribers to be able to immediately use that old state. This will be particularly true if someone's typing. You don't want to have to force someone to type something new to be able to read what the value of that input is. So RxJS, kindly enough, provides a different type of subject called a behavior subject. And if we use that, now we will see when any new subscriber subscribes, it will get the last emitted value. So part of learning RxJS is to know the different observables and when to use them. Since we're dealing with the DOM and we're having the DOM write to observables, it makes sense to preserve the DOM state in observables that actually preserve state. So behavior subject is one of those. Just like before with subjects, you can call next on a behavior subject and that emits the value. So somehow, as a user is typing, we need to call next on our user card number observable. Let's see how Angular allows us to do that with a little bit of magic. So with Angular, you can listen to events on an element with these parentheses and then the name of your event. So this is listening to the input event of inputs. The input event fires whenever the text changes. It's different from the change event because the change event only fires on blur. The input event will fire no matter what as any text changes in your input element. And then we can call something. We can call a method in Angular. Well, here, what I want to do is call the user card numbers next to emit a new value, and it will also save the value because it's a behavior subject. But I want to emit a new value, and what value do I want to emit? Well, I want to emit the actual text we see in the input. And to do that with Angular, I can get the event, the input event like this, and then the target is this actual input element, and then I can read the input element's value, that's its text. So this is how I can essentially write to that user card number observable with the value of the input. And then the final thing is to write out that value of the observable. But user card number is an observable, so you can't just write out the value of user card number. You need to get its internal value. Angular provides this async pipe that can read an observable's last emitted value and then write that out to the page. There's a lot more information about this technique here, but as part of this exercise, anytime you have an observable and you want to write out its value, you just use this pipe async after the observable, and that will write out its value. So now you should be prepared to complete this solution yourself. I highly encourage everybody to try to solve it before just skipping ahead and watching my answer. So click pause right now and do your best to solve it. That's how you learn, is to try, possibly fail, and then see the solution. You learn much better that way. So by now, hopefully you've completed the solution and just want to see me walk through it, something you already know. So the solution here is I'm gonna do it step by step. So I have my code pen here, and the first thing I'm gonna do is actually kind of work in reverse order. I know I want to write out the user card number. That's the goal. A lot of times I start programming from the templates perspective anyways. I know I want this user card number. Now, how am I going to get it? Well, first I need a user card number. And I'm going to create a new behavior subject. I'm going to say, hey, you're going to be a string. And now I've got a user card number property. But I don't have a behavior subject yet. I need to make sure I import this from RxJS. So I'm going to go up to the top and write that bit to import it from RxJS. Okay, so now I should have a behavior subject. And then the final thing is I need to write out the value of this input as a person's typing. So let's do that. So I'm going to listen to on input. I'm going to get the, not behavior subject, but user card number. I'm going to call next, and I'm going to pass it the event targets value, which again is this inputs value. And then I should be able to run this. If I did everything correct, I should, once I've done it correct, I should be able to just type and see the value down here. All right, we got it working. See you at the next step.